Hi, everybody. Welcome to Saturday. Happy Saturday morning to you. Today is our day of training, and today's the day that I present something new to everybody at 11 o'clock Saturday morning here. So make sure that you subscribe and make sure that you turn on the notifications, because every week's topic is different and there's always something that you can implement in your service, or if you're a coordinator in a family daycare service, and especially if you're a family daycare educator. You'll hear me talk all the time about family daycare educators and the work that they do, and how I use my role as a governance advisor. Now, I operate at that level with approved providers, and the information that I'm giving you is on this channel. It's all free and it will help you. And don't forget, I get centres and services up to exceeding in really short amount of time. That's what I do. That's what I've done for a number of years. So I'm sharing with you a lot of information to family daycare educators, because I am truly committed to family daycare as the optimal model for early childhood. And if you have been following me for a little while, you know that I back those statements up with the EPI study, which is I can put a link in here, which is a very good study that all early childhood educators, I believe, should be aware of and should know. And that is what underpinned the change in our legislation in Australia back in 1999. So it's an excellent study. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and we're going to get our presentation started. So I will talk to you as I go. Now, you do know me. There is always some kind of technical issue as I go, but let's see how we go today. All right, so welcome again. So today we are talking about conversations and how you can utilise conversations in your service, in your business, as a coordinator, and how you can use targeted conversations to improve your service, get the right educators for your service, get the right families if you're a family daycare educator. So the value of conversational learning in your business. So that's what we're looking at today. All right. So firstly, I'll tell you a little bit more about me. So my name's Jodie Signorino, and I've been in education and care service provision for well over 30 years now. And I have focused on governance and leadership for probably the last 16 years. And I currently specialise in family daycare, although, as I said, I do work for all service types. So I do project work for OSH, long daycare, those sorts of things. But predominantly, I focus on family daycare. And as I said, I do see family daycare as the optimal model for early childhood education. So that's what I'm bringing to you today. I would like to take this opportunity as part of our Saturday morning trainings, that I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, and I pay my genuine respects to elders past, present and emerging. And we meet together today on traditional land and for the betterment of all children. So I have that my genuine acknowledgements to that. Okay. Now, don't forget to make sure that you subscribe to this channel, because every week is a different topic, and every week there are different tips and strategies that you can use in your family daycare business. And also make sure you turn the notifications on, because that way you'll know what's coming up, and you'll be able to join us early and not miss out on anything that you're particularly interested in your self-directed learning. I also do talk a lot about self-directed learning, so make sure you watch these videos regularly, because they will all help develop your professional knowledge and your skills and your strategies. Now, I'm very big on strategies, this is one strategy that I use all the time. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I have already mentioned that I do work in that space with approved providers. So I operate at that level. That's my day today, working with them. And this is why I bring that knowledge back down to you guys. So I use this conversational learning strategy, and have used this strategy now for a number of years. And like any strategy, it takes a little bit of thought, it takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of practice to make sure that you get it right. But once you embed a conversational strategy in different aspects of your business or your service, you'll find that it works on a number of levels. So we're going to unpack some of that a little bit today. Now, there is a real, the Gordon Perks conversational theory, which underpins and guides the type of conversations that I'm talking about. So they are deliberate, they are focused, they are targeted conversations. It's not just around, whether you like my yellow jacket today. They are definitely it's a targeted approach to determining whether families are a right fit for your service, whether an educator is a right fit for your service, or whether, as if you're an educator looking to register with a new service provider, these conversations will help you identify whether or not it's the right fit, so that you can make a decision and not get 3 months into registration and go, you know what, this provider is not really suitable to me, or I can't do what I want. So that's the strategy behind this. We know that the conversation theory is a way that you can, well, it's called knowledge creation. So it's a way that you can help the other person you're talking with, if that's a family member, you can build their knowledge around why you do what you do. And that helps with that buy-in. So you'll find that you'll get more parents acknowledging what you do, understanding what you do, advocating for what you do. So that's the principle behind this. You'll also see that its conversation is very different to a question and answer, like you would see in an interview process or an induction process. It's more around using people's natural language. And the most important part about this is you get to see the emotion that's attached to it. So it gives you an insight into somebody. It gives you an insight into what their values are, what they truly feel about something. So it's definitely a way. And if you read my newsletter yesterday, you will see that vocational training institutions have used this for a number of years. So conversational assessments have been, conversational learning, conversational assessments have been around for a really long time based on that principle. Now, again, we have conversations all day, every day. You have conversations with your friends, you have conversations with your service provider, you have conversations with the families, you have conversations with, your own family. So we have conversations all the time. So the art of conversations is not necessarily the learning here. It's really around the art of targeted conversations. And I will go a little bit further on around, if you're a mentor and you've got a mentee in place, how you target and you guide and you direct those conversations so that you can either create knowledge in somebody else, or you can identify somebody's values or opinions or attitudes to something, and that will help you determine what that person either needs, whether that person is a right fit, or whatever that looks like for you. So we are talking about that. So what are we talking about today? Conversations. So we will talk about how conversations will benefit you as either a service provider, an educator, or a coordinator. I'll give you some tips on how to start conversations and get those going as you go. Who you should have conversations with, and when you should have implement a focused conversation, and what to look for so you know that it may not working, and how you can restructure that conversation in the moment. So that's what we're going to look at today. We know that the benefits of conversation, engaging people in targeted or focused conversations, we know that I've already told you, we know that there is an emotional engagement there. So that's how you can see values, attitudes, those sorts of things. You can, in a conversation, use stories, like things like I used to say all the time, my grandmother used to say. So it just brings another layer to that conversation. So you can use stories or narratives and those sorts of things in a conversation that you can't really use in a question and answer scenario. Conversations, generally speaking, will bring people to a different level. So it's more relaxed and people are more free to speak what they want to speak. Conversations that go well do absolutely go towards building your relationships. Natural language, focus and direction. So natural language is just around in that relaxed space. You'll find people are more open, or will be more open to telling you what they really think about something. So how to start a conversation. Questions is obviously the first one, but you want open-ended questions. So it's not just as simple as what is the National Quality Framework, because that's a closed answer. Well, the National Quality Framework is ... Open-ended questions are a little bit more, and as educators, I'm sure you practice open-ended questions with children all the time. So it is around, I've been reading this and I wonder what would happen if. What do you think would happen if? So it's kind of that you want that open-ended start at the beginning of the conversation, so that you can see where it's going to go, and then that's when you jump in and direct it. It's always good it's also good to start with a wondering. So if you've been speaking with a family and you're sort of little bit confused about what they really expect of you or what they want, you can say something like, oh, the other day we were doing this and I was wondering if maybe if we tried this, that this might be a different outcome. I was wondering if we started this, or I've been wondering lately. So, well, wondering is always a really good way to do it. And a reflection. Now, we practice reflection all the time in our work every day. So we all do it in early childhood. So your reflection, if you're reflecting on something, so I don't know, you may have gone to the park and the children didn't walk as as like you'd prepared them to, they were sort of running off ahead of you or anything like that. So what is that reflection? And when you're speaking with your service provider or family members, you can say, the other day when we went for a walk and this is what happened, this is what I've been started, this is what I wondered, based on that reflection, how, what I could do different. And also resources. So by putting out new resources to families, whether that be a handout or a letter, a newsletter, or a pamphlet or something along those lines, that's a really good conversation too, because if you hand that to somebody, you may catch up with them the next day and say, how did you go with that pamphlet? How did you go with that resource that I gave you? What did you think about that? Is there anything that you think that that you've picked up that maybe I didn't pick up? Those sorts of things. So they're all really good ways to start a conversation. Well, who should you engage in a conversation? Well, definitely everybody, but there are some real pinpointed situations or circumstances where conversations work the best. So during recruitment, so whether you're a service provider recruiting an educator or whether you're an educator and you're looking to register with a new service provider, that is the absolute ideal time to engage in conversation to find out the values, attitudes, philosophies of others. It's also when you're enrolling or engaging new families, that's a really good time, because if you've got a family that's coming on board and you don't know them well, having that and guiding that targeted conversation, it really does give you an insight into what the long term may look like. So you may have a different philosophy to the families, and you kind of can gather with that conversation whether or not that family may or may not be a good fit for your service and what that could look like. You do have conversations with children of every day, that I'm pretty certain of, because I haven't met any of you that aren't committed to their educational program. So you would be having conversations. But again, it's around turning those conversations. If you've got a child who's unsettled, and you can have a conversation with a 3-year-old, and when you bring it down to their level, you may have a child that's unsettled, you may have a child that's not really engaging in the program, and sometimes those conversations will help you get an insight into what that child is really interested in or what that child wants. And also conversations within your community. Particularly with the new child safe practices, we do really want those broader conversations in the community, and particularly in family daycare. You're out and about in your community all the time. You're seeing the school teachers if you're taking children to school. You're going to maybe the local shops, and you're building relationships. So with child safe practice, with child safe standards in mind, this is a really good opportunity for you to have conversations with your community. What are they doing around child safe practices? You can highlight if they're not doing anything around child safe practices and help children understand, help families understand. So conversations really do and really can underpin any of the work that you do, okay? So when to start a conversation? There's a whole range of reasons why you would start a conversation as a service provider. If you've been working with an educator and that educator may need additional supports or may need further information, that would be a really good time to start a conversation. So you might start with, oh, I've noticed, and you could take it from there. Or have you thought about extending this? Or have you read this article? Is there something else there? So that's a really good time to start a conversation. I've already mentioned during recruitment, enrolment, and those periods of time, they're invaluable then. But even if you can see, and we are facing a workforce shortage right now, so staff and across the board in all education and care service types are struggling with the shortage, and we are starting to get a real negative negative rhetoric within the sector. So rather than focusing on the negative, you can use your conversational skills to turn that negative into a positive. Yes, we have to manage this. Yes, there are considerations to this, but let's start changing that rhetoric, because the further we go with building this negative rhetoric within all of our language and all of our Facebook and all of this kind of stuff, the more people will buy into that and the more we will lose from the workforce. So it's a really good time when it is unsettled or a period of change that you embed these conversations so that you can create knowledge and learning in others and help them rise above the negativity that's currently there or the negativity that they're surrounded by, and help them start to put a little bit of a positive swing on things. Now, before you start a conversation, so we've talked about why, we've talked about who, we've talked about when, so have a really good think about it. So the difference with these type of conversations that I'm referring to today are different to the conversations that just emerge freely, which hopefully they do in your service. These are around really targeted conversations because you want to create learning in other people. So it's really good to think that through first. So what is the purpose of this conversation that you want to start with somebody else? What are you trying to achieve? What knowledge do you want to create in another person? Now, who are the participants? What is their language literacy and numeracy ability? What is their perception in your mind? Are they your customer? Are they your peer? Are they your service provider? So they're, like your boss or the coordinator, those sort of things. And what is the learning? So you've got to be really clear about what is the learning that you want, and then how will you guide that conversation. So these type of conversations you really need to go into with some kind of thought or some kind of pre-planning before you do jump on it. So what is knowledge creation? I talk all the time. Now, many of you that follow me know that I advocate strongly for educators to have business skills and to have a business plan to embed that mindset and get that mindset behind their home business, because that's what it is. It is a home business. So when you're talking with families and you're creating these conversations and using these conversations to determine, is this family a right fit, or to share knowledge, what is the knowledge that you want to create in families? Firstly, we want families to know why we do what we do. What are the principles that underpin why we do what we do? Why do we develop an educational program? Why do we take children out into the community? What are the learnings that you want families to know? And often the example I will use here is, we have families that may have unrealistic expectations of us as educators. And what does that look like? So sometimes I know I've spoken with families and that's been an indication when I first meet with families. So it's about creating that knowledge in their head that in order to develop an educational program that has the right amount of risk so that children can explore new environments, children can take on new challenges, those sorts of things, that we may see children get hurt, whether that's they might fall and bump their head, they may scrape their knees, they may jam a finger. There are a number of expected, what would be considered expected injuries in children when they're trying new things. So parents sometimes need to know that. So that's that knowledge creation that we're putting in parents' minds. We may also need to, if you've got a new family coming in, that knowledge creation during a conversation is at least letting parents know that, you've got a 9-month-old child. This may have, that your child may have some separation anxiety, and this is what it may look like. You may find that they're here really great for the first couple of days, and then you may see that there's some behaviours that you haven't seen before because they haven't been in camp before, and that's really expected and it's actually predictable behaviour. So it's making sure that they understand why you do what you do. That's one of the first things we do when engaging and enrolling and orientating new families into education and care services, is making sure that they're aware of why we do what we do. It's also around, I spoke last week about the conferences and professional development, and it's around that knowledge creation in families that by you taking a day off or whatever that looks like for you to do your own professional development, that why you're doing that professional development, so that you want families to advocate for that professional development. So this is all part of your knowledge creation. Now remember, one of the things I rabbit on a lot about is your customer service skills, because in family daycare, it is a business arrangement. It is. It's not like a community-owned centre where families are members of that association. It's got a very different relationship. So there is a business aspect to this. So remember your 3 Ps when you're having these conversations. You've got to remain professional, obviously. You've got to be patient, so that's why we have an orientation program that follows on from an enrolment. So you've got to be patient to make sure that you have the right conversation at the right time with the right person, that it's targeted to them. You've got to know them a little bit, those sorts of things, and make sure that you put people first, which means during these conversations you are seeking feedback from families and you are seeking input from families so that you can determine their attitude or their expectations against things. So it's about listening to them and making sure that you are hearing what they're saying. And if you can modify something, feel free to modify it. That's how we meet our families' needs. Now, if a conversation isn't going as well as what you wanted it to go, or it's going off target, these are some of the things that you're looking for. So you want to see these conversations and if you look at the body language, you want conversations to be done in a manner that it's a coming together, it's a shared understanding, it's oh yeah, I never thought of it like that. So that's what we want to achieve with that. So monitor body language. If you see people sort of going back like this, then they may not be really receptive to what you're saying. But if body language, you're leaning forward, those sorts of things, then they are receptive of what you're saying. You can tell by somebody's emotion if you are, they might be getting, I want to say aggressive, but that's a little bit too beyond, but they might be getting defensive in something that you're saying, or they might be really challenging you back because they're resisting that new learning. So then you would know to either re-guide that conversation, or you may put a stop and just change that conversation depending on the topic and what you're talking about and those sorts of things. Being mindful in a conversation of somebody's passion, like I say all the time, if I'm in a social gathering, and somebody asks me something, I will often say, don't get me started on that, because you'll never hear me stop. So, where do people's passions lie? And they're a really good way to jump into, and just make sure that you are listening to people and being really aware of what they're saying to you. And sometimes during a conversation, people will kind of drop things out really quickly, and they're the ones that, with no thought, no filter, sometimes those comments that people make during a conversation are very poignant. So watch out for those terms that maybe slip out, or facial expressions, those sorts of things, to know you're doing well. Now, I say all the time, review, improve, and embed. So this is the goal that we want to do with everything. So if you are learning this conversational strategy for now, and it is new to you, make sure that after you do 1 or 2, that you review. Okay, what did I do? Could I have done that better? Maybe I shouldn't have said. I wonder if I did. What if I could? I didn't have time, so that was bad timing to start that conversation. Improve it for next time, and then start embedding this strategy, this practice, into your everyday business operation as you go. All right. Now, don't forget, customer service. I can't tell you enough the customer service principles that will assist you run your family daycare business. It's the same with every business. And this is the bit that I find a little bit unfathomable, in the sense that so many educators still don't have just a basic business plan, or just the knowledge of customer service skills and what that looks like for families. I think we've kind of left a lot of that business stuff behind. But as I said earlier, I talk with approved providers all day, every day, and this is a business. Like, you've got to run it as a viable financial business, and a customer service approach has to be in place, because it is a business. So making sure that you use this strategy to get the best for you and your business, to get the right families engaged with you, to make sure that families are working with you and advocating for you. So that's part of the strategy behind this. And you do know that I have the Business of a Family Daycare Educator. And again, rabbit on about business skills all the time for family daycare educators. There's over 5 hours worth of training. There is a cash flow projection. You can just put your numbers in and your bottom dollar comes up. We talk about hidden costs. We talk about customer service, what that looks like. And this is all information that you can put in your branding and your marketing and your advertising, and what does that look like for you? How do you attract families? And I've put a free business plan link in here down the bottom, because I do want you all to start thinking about that from a governance perspective. It just makes so much sense. And yeah, again, so just make sure you jump in, grab your free business plan template. It does come with 2 information videos to get you started, absolutely free. So yeah, jump in and take advantage of that. And I will see you next Saturday. So have a wonderful week, everybody. The weather's changing, which is really lovely. Have a wonderful week. I've got nothing on really this weekend. I am painting a table. That's probably all I am going to do. So if I remember, I'll put up some before and after shots up on Facebook as I go. So enjoy your weekend. Have a wonderful time. Keep up the good work. You are doing a remarkable job. And if you have heard me speak before, I've been known to say many times, this is a perfect opportunity with so many staff being a little bit disgruntled in long day care and centre-based services, what that looks like. This is a really good opportunity to bring some very highly skilled, experienced, qualified educators into the family daycare sector. So welcome aboard. Yeah, so keep up the good work, and I will speak with you next week. See ya. Bye. Enjoy. See you.